When I put The Sims back onto my main computer earlier this year, I kind of thought I'd be saying goodbye to my productivity for good, but I ended up getting a boundary and self-care lesson I did not even know that I needed. So in this week's Work Brighter broadcast, I am sharing why I now make sure to build in Sims time every week, and what The Sims in particular, as opposed to any other video game, has taught me about taking care of myself, and what I think it can probably teach you too. I am Brittany Berger from workbrighter.co, and this is the Brighter broadcast, your 10-minute-ish tip to work brighter and live better this week. Before we dig into all things Simlish and Rosebud and cheat codes and simoleons, comment and say hi and let me know your favorite video game. And if it is The Sims, since that's honestly one of the only ones I'm familiar with, let me know which version and which expansion pack. I have been playing The Sims for a while. I think the expansion pack that was the first one that I bought was The Sims Livin' Large. And I never thought of it as like a good thing that I loved it so much, but I do now. And today we are talking about why. I have been wanting to do this topic for so long. If you have been part of the Work Brighter friend group for a while now, you know that one of the things that took me a while to realize, but was super revolutionary when I did, is that rest is work when it's needed. And after a certain point, you can't work anymore until you've slept or eaten or had some fun. So what does The Sims have to do with that? I have played Sims very sporadically since I've graduated college, mostly because I knew how addicted to it I always get, and so it's never been on the main computer that I use for work. But recently, I started playing The Sims for a little bit every day, and it was actually at the suggestion of my therapist. She suggested that since I had a hard time unplugging from work, partly because it's so easy to open my computer and just do it, and so she suggested that I just make it easier for myself to play video games and relax. And that way, when I was looking for something fun to do on my computer, I could open up, a full screen game and not accidentally slip back into work. And at first I thought that I would get super addicted to it again, and that hasn't happened. And that's because I'm a recovering workaholic. It's now easier for me to slip back into work than, even if it's like unimportant work, than it is for me to slip into something totally fun like Netflix or video games. And what really taught me everything I needed to know about self-care was that needs panel. So if you don't play, each character has, over in the corner, it's like a measure of how fulfilled each of the important areas of their lives are. And the 6 needs that are really crucial for every Sim: bladder, hunger, energy, fun, social, and hygiene. Those are the areas a Sim's needs to fulfill to just basically function, to just do the bare minimum. And you know what? We're just like Sims, because the whole point of The Sims is to be like real life. To an extent, they still do some pretty crazy-ish. But in our lives, when we're stuck in workaholism and that whole hustle mindset and self-care shame and guilt for relaxing, we pay attention to a totally different set of needs that are not super accurate. We pay attention to things like productivity and revenue and energy, but in a totally different way. Note that in The Sims, a Sims needs fun to function, and they need social interaction to function. Productivity is not a Sim need, but fun and social are. And that was just kind of like, boom, when I realized that, and that these are supposed to be modeled off of us. And when it gets to a point where a Sim's need is too low, they just won't function as normal. If a Sim doesn't get enough sleep, they just won't go to work. They won't cook dinner. They just cannot do things. If they are already at work and their needs become too low, they will literally fall asleep on the floor. One of the weird things they do. Or they'll come home, or their performance just starts tanking, and it starts being better for their job for them to be at home resting. They just don't function as normal when they haven't slept, but also like when they haven't had fun. I was playing The Sims last week, and this is what reminded me how badly I needed to do this. I was playing last week, and I couldn't get a Sim to go write their book. They were an author, so they worked from home. They didn't have to go anywhere. It was just like me. They worked from home. I just needed to get them to sit down at the computer and write. But every time they just would walk over to the computer and then they just wouldn't sit down. My girl would just not sit down and write. And oh my God, could I relate to that so much though when I thought about it. She couldn't write and do her job and be productive because she hadn't had enough fun and she was stressed out. You know, they have the little moodlets in the corner, and if you go hover on them, I could actually tell she was too tense to write. And I think that that was just such an important lesson for me as a writer, as a recovering workaholic, and as a self-care advocate. She couldn't work until she had some fun, and so I let her sit down at the computer and play a game first, just like I was doing. That was just so huge for me, that all of their needs, no matter how trivial sounding, need to be tended to unless you use cheat codes. That was just huge for me to realize. I even messaged my therapist and I was like, oh my God, this has been more helpful than either of us ever realized. Yeah, I play The Sims all the time now. It is so important for me. It is like my reward after a hard day, because I do like writing at night and then also winding down for a little bit before I go to bed. And so now just like a regular routine for me is to finish up my writing and then play The Sims until my bedtime. And I'm an adult and I'm more responsible than I give myself credit for. And so I don't normally end up staying all night playing, but to say that hasn't happened at all recently would be a lie. I feel so much less guilty playing The Sims and any video game now. I realize it's important. And I also, it's just a self-care kick in the butt to realize that. I loved it. And so that was what I had today to say. And yeah, that was it. If you want to talk about The Sims or your own self-care lessons or your own video games, I would love to do that in the comments. Peace and Rosebud Cheat Code out.